generally, the Western mainstream media has been very quick to defend Zelensky and the Ukrainian government whenever something goes wrong, or generally they just frame and portray attacks on Donetsk, Lugansk, wherever, as simply on civilians or as Russian attacks. And they're not doing that anymore. They're saying, well, it's unclear why Ukraine did this, but they did it nonetheless. Maybe we can get to now the United Nations trip, Zelensky's UN tour, and he's at the UN General Assembly now, probably speaking at any moment today, and then he'll head to Washington to meet with Biden individually, more in depth. What is this going to achieve? Because I wanted to also pull up, because I think the New York Times has been kind of the paper of record for once on how to read where things are going. And here they had a report that in his U.S. visit, Zelensky is going to make a case for more aid and say thank you, where he's trying to navigate political currents while expressing gratitude for Western support. And there are many, citations in this article about how, people like National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, you have, I think it's Ben Wallace in the UK. All of them have commented on Zelensky's lack of gratitude, not being thankful for all of the support that he's been given. In fact, oftentimes complaining more and more. The more he gets, the more he complains and whines and asks and requests and demands even from the collective West. So this report to me is astonishing, but I'm wondering if what your opinions are on it. Maybe we can start with Alexander.
Well, I think you've got principally correct. I mean, the Ukrainians, Zelensky himself, come with these demands with a colossal sense of entitlement. When they talk about the fact that they need weapons and they need money, they always speak about the fact that the Western powers are somehow obliged to give them all these weapons and all that money, and that it's Ukraine is somehow fighting the West's war for it, and that any country that doesn't provide Ukraine with everything it wants, every tank and every missile that it wants, well, that's somehow not being a moral or proper country. That's very much the line that Zelensky has been taking up to this point. And again, what the New York Times is saying, and by the way, I have absolutely no doubt at all that here the administration has been telling Zelensky very carefully what you're going to say when you're in Washington. You're not going to just go around demanding all the time. You're going to express gratitude. You're going to try and appear to be gracious. You're going to be grateful for what you're given. But of course, that's not Zelensky's style. It's not the Ukrainian style. If I go back to Budanov and his interview in The Economist, the intelligence chief, he was again talking the same old way, that the Western powers have all this weaponry hidden away in their arsenals, which they're secretly keeping from us, but we know it's there and we should have it. I mean, it was actually exactly that kind of thing which the Americans and the Europeans are beginning to get very, very annoyed about. But this goes to actually the real point about Zelensky, which is that he does not do diplomacy well. The more people encounter him, the less they like him. We've said this about other leaders. We'll probably come to that eventually. But over the course of this year, the West put Zelensky on a sort of world tour. He went to the Middle East. He spoke to the Arab League. He went to the G7. He met with Modi, and he was going to meet with Lula there. He met other people. And the consistent thing was that people from the global South didn't like him. He rubbed them up the wrong way. He came across as very demanding, very entitled, very arrogant, and the transcript, rather the Indian account of his meeting with Modi is absolutely, it shows that the two men didn't get on at all. Lula was furious because Zelensky didn't even bother to turn up to a meeting. at the meeting with the Arab League, you see the Arab leaders, particularly the Saudi Crown Prince, who's the true leader of Saudi Arabia. He looks absolutely furious. So what the administration is trying to do is they're trying to take control of how Zelensky behaves whilst he's in the United States. They don't want him offending people in Congress. They don't want him offending other important people. They don't want him undermining Ukraine's and by extension, the administration's position. And I personally think, and this is my own view, I think they don't particularly look positively on the fact that he's going to the United Nations. Biden and the administration have been making a big effort to win support in the General Assembly. And they don't want this person turning up, being as arrogant and rude and demanding and entitled as he is, and putting world leaders off. So they're trying to some extent to keep him under a short rein. They're telling him, even publicly through the New York Times, look, this is what you're going to say. They're probably going to try to write his speech when he speaks to the General Assembly. But I don't think ultimately it will make any difference. I don't think Zelensky can be anyone other than himself.
Yes, and before you chime in, Alex, I mean, it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I kind of wish it had already happened. But just to see Zelensky up there after moment, you mentioned, I mean, the videos that went around of Zelensky's Arab League remarks were just, I mean, they were just cringeworthy, because he was telling a group of countries that know very much well what it means to be invaded and what it means to be pushed around and bullied, telling them that they should take a lesson from Ukraine, and while the very forces that have been bullying them are backing Ukraine against Russia. So, it is truly astounding. And for me, and Alex, I want you to jump in here, but I see this as almost like there's been all kinds of shakeups in Ukraine's government. I mean, there's the firing of Reznikov, and now all of the deputy defense ministers are gone. And there has been kind of a carousel going on throughout the conflict, but of late it's been more intense. And given the narrative shift around Zelensky himself, it almost feels like this is your chance. This is like your last chance to be the leader we want you to be. And if not, you never know what can happen. There can be a bigger shakeup than what's occurred. That's kind of what I'm feeling underneath the surface of these reports and the way things are going around even this UN tour. But Alex, jump in.
No, I mean, guys like Reznikov or Malyar, the deputy defense minister, they're lucky. They're lucky that they got out early. Believe me, they're very lucky that they got out early. Look, Alexander's 100% correct. You're not going to change Zelensky. Zelensky is a spoiled actor, period. He's a spoiled actor, and this role has consumed him. I mean, he is the role. They told him at the beginning of this conflict, you're going to be the hero. You're going to put up this getup, this green camouflage sweatshirt, sweatpants, and this is going to be who you are. We're going to present you to the people as the hero, the heroic figure. We're going to get Sean Penn to visit you a couple of times. All these actors are going to come and visit you and bow down to you. We're going to put a documentary together, and we're going to build you up. And then he's taken on this person. I mean, I think he's lost his own identity in this role. And everyone around Zelensky, let's not forget, everyone around him, they were his production team at his TV show that he was running with Kolomoisky. These people aren't diplomats. They're not politicians. These were his script writers, his directors, all these guys were working with him on a TV show. And all of a sudden they became the government, and they became the government that is now fighting a conflict with Russia. And he's a spoiled actor. He's been getting money and weapons whenever he's asked for it. Sometimes when he doesn't ask for it, they've been giving him money and weapons. Where those weapons are going, who really knows? Where that money is going, no one knows. No one has any idea where that money is going. And when there have been people in Congress, Matt Gaetz or J.D. Vance or people in the Senate or the House that have said we need an audit, Rand Paul, they're like, no audit. We're not going to have any audit because no one knows. And all of a sudden, Zelensky's going to be in the United States, he's in the United States, and he's going to have people tell him, you've burned through everything. We don't have anything more to give you, or we're going to have to taper off. He's not going to be able to handle that. He's going to crack. He's going to crumble. And he's got problems back at home. He's got these Banderites. He's got these guys in West Ukraine. These guys also want their cash. They want their weapons to sell on the black market. They want to go harder at war with Russia. I mean, these are Banderites. And when they're done with Russia, they want to go after Poland. Right? This is the way these guys think in West Ukraine. These Banderites, these Bandera forces. So, I mean, they're going to try to get Zelensky to be gracious. He's not going to pull it off. Maybe he'll pull it off the first day, maybe the second day, but he won't be able to pull it off. Everyone that meets the guy can't stand the guy. His whole green Che Guevara or Castro shtick that he has going on, people are over it. It's a year and a half now. Put on a suit, put on a tie. He can't do it. He is coming to the end of his role, and he knows it. And I think the Biden White House, that's the message that they're trying to tell him, and that's the message that they're going to give him. And I'll just say one more thing. I think there was a huge shift that happened in the United States with American citizens' perception of Zelensky and the conflict. And I think that shift happened with Maui. I think when the tragedy in Maui happened and they saw that Biden really didn't care, and they saw that the Biden White House gave $700 to the residents of Maui, while at the same exact time giving billions and billions to Zelensky, I think something happened in the overall psyche of American citizens, where they said, we're done with Ukraine. We support Ukraine. Putin is evil. Putin bad. Putin dictator. We support Ukraine, but we can't accept $700 to our own citizens and $20 billion to this guy running around in green pajamas. I think a big shift happened with Maui. That's my own personal belief, but I don't know. Maybe in the chat, people in the U.S. that are living in the U.S., maybe they can confirm this, or maybe they'll say that's not what happened. But that's how I see it. That's how I see things.
Yeah, well, it's definitely it's a cascade. I mean, Maui was kind of, for lack of a better analogy, like more fuel on a fire, because there have been numerous examples over and over again. Every time there's been more infusion of aid, not a lot of progress. And then, of course, the situation in the United States is a disaster. The economic situation is a disaster. Biden's popularity is a disaster at this moment. You can't even get the guy anywhere. He travels to Vietnam. He looks like a bumbling fool. He does, wherever he is, he does not look great, and people aren't feeling great about where things are at. And certainly the polls that show that people are not happy with any kind of increase in aid to Ukraine, no matter how much they can spin the polls to support the overall project, there is a dwindling support for more aid to Ukraine, because that's how the story has gone, is Ukraine gets some, and then they get more, and then they get more. And that just is not flying anymore. And it could be a watershed moment, because similar in 2020, when right before Trump was up for re-election again, there was the whole pandemic heist, so to speak, and he didn't play his cards right economically, and that hurt him a lot right at the end. And this Maui situation for Biden could be very similar, definitely. But with that said, I wanted to ask, maybe to close on the Ukraine part so we can get to some other stories. Where is this going? Because, I know both of you have talked about the CIA and the SVR, Russia's foreign intelligence, have been having talks. There's, of course, all of this talk about in the mainstream media discourse about, in the collective West, about a freeze or a long war. In terms of the conclusion of this, do we see a freeze in the future? And what is the significance of these backdoor channels? Because, of course, publicly, the United States has been very antagonistic toward really talking. But then you'll even hear Blinken after his visit to Kiev, saying, well, Ukraine is actually ready to talk, which is a lie because that's not the truth. He's like, oh, Ukraine's ready to talk if Russia's ready. But that almost felt like a message that this could be, that there could be a wind down in some form. And I'm wondering what form you think that will take.
Well, that was exactly what it was. It was a message to both the Russians and the Ukrainians to start talking, and that the United States does want to see some kind of end to this conflict now. And the reason they want to see this end to this conflict, at least to the military side of the conflict, to the actual fighting, is because at one level, they now realize Ukraine isn't going to win. So this is a losing proposition for them. We've just been through all, what Alex has said and what you've said, Danny, about the fact that this is becoming an unpopular issue in the United States. They have a very difficult election coming next year. Biden is still there. He's proving to be an increasingly hard sell. We're getting more and more people saying that he should stand down. In Britain, people are starting, some really surprising people are starting to say that he should stand down. The former Conservative Party leader, William Hague, who was foreign minister at one time, he says that Biden should stand down. So we're having a lot of these problems. And so what the administration would like to see happen is for this problem, because it has now become a problem, to go away. And the way they want it to go away is you freeze the conflict. You freeze the conflict along the existing ceasefire lines, and then you are able to concentrate to focus on other matters. Ukraine stops being there in the news every day. We don't have commentaries about it. We don't have pressure about it because the conflict is frozen. But they are not prepared to give anything meaningful to the Russians. Putin, Lavrov, the foreign minister, actually used that word. He said, if we get meaningful offers to negotiate, we will listen to them. We will work with them. But we haven't had anything. We haven't had anything meaningful at all, because the one thing that the administration cannot concede under any circumstances, or so it seems, is the question of Ukraine's future status outside NATO. The Russians say Ukraine must remain fully outside the NATO system. And of course, the United States, the administration, has now committed itself to this principle that NATO has an open door and that someday it will be able to admit Ukraine. In fact, they want to go a lot further than that. They want to give Ukraine security guarantees, and they want to give Ukraine even more weapons. And they're talking about a West German solution whereby Ukraine bides its time, builds itself up, waits for Russia to experience some other crisis, and then gets its territory back. The Russians will not accept that. The Russians have made it very clear that proposal is a non-starter. They've had ex-diplomats going apparently every month to Moscow, trying to persuade people in Moscow to listen to this. There was an article in an obscure newspaper, Moscow Times. We covered it, in which they said one of these diplomats who was going to Moscow, American ex-diplomats going to Moscow with this proposal, actually made the incredible claim. He said, Russia should accept this. It's a good deal for you. And if Putin is the person who's standing in the way and preventing you from accepting this deal, then remove him. Get rid of Putin, because he's the hardliner, and then we can freeze the conflict and all will be well. And the Russians won't accept it. No part of the Russian political system will accept this. So how does this conflict end? It ends the way the Russians decide. That is the simple answer to that question. Now, the Russians are taking their time. They're building up their forces. They're calling up hundreds of thousands of men. We spoke earlier in the program about how they've ramped up arms production. They're building up their connections with China. Putin is going to be visiting Xi Jinping in Beijing in October. They've had a very interesting meeting with Kim Jong-un, which is somewhat mysterious and puzzling. But anyway, Shoigu, the defense minister, is in Iran. We've had all of these discussions. All of this is going on. And ultimately, there will at some point be a Russian offensive. I'm not going to speculate about the time, but the Russians will ultimately work to bring this conflict to a close on their terms. The diplomacy that's coming out of the White House and the State Department is a non-starter.
Yeah, I mean, perfectly summed up. You know, isn't it, Alexander? It's like mafia tactics, isn't it? It's like, you know, The Godfather, make you an offer you can't refuse. That's what they're trying to do with Russia. You know, they're coming and they're saying, you know, accept a freeze, accept this West German Korea armistice thing. It'll be good for you. And the Russians are like, you're not giving us anything. And then they're coming back and they're sending drones to Crimea, drones to Moscow. They're trying to poke at Russia, disrupt Russia, drive the Russians crazy. You know, cut them off from entering here, cut them off from entering there. This is their tactic. A little bit diplomacy, and then we're going to also hit at them as well, and try to drive them to the point where they say, you know what? All right, enough. We'll accept your armistice. Fine. You know, we're sick of having you guys send drones every day to Crimea. That's what they're trying to do. And even Budanov, I think, Alexander, didn't Budanov even admit as much in that Economist interview? He's like, our strategy is drones.
Yes.
In order to disrupt the airports, the flights. I mean, he gave it away. He gave the game away. But that's the U.S.'s strategy. Yeah. Budanov said as much.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.